Harwich Board of Selectmen's meeting for March 12th, 2020.
This conference will now be recorded.
I'll start this again. Thank you, Joe. I'm always too fast.
That was channel 18.
I'd like to start the Harwich Board of Selectmen's meeting for March 12th, 2021. Special topic of today is to review some of the department budget presentations. And I'll start with a roll call of the Board of Selectmen. Michael?
I'm here.
Don?
I'm here.
Ed?
Here.
And I'm here. And I don't see Steve, so he may not have joined us yet. We're in session. John, can I ask you to take a roll for Finance Committee?
Sure. Thank you, Larry. Good morning, everyone. John Chory, Chair of Finance Committee. I'd like to do a roll call vote of our members to see who are present. Mary Anderson? Here. Angelo?
Here.
Dan?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Good. Thank you, Mark. And John. We got 5 members, Larry. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Joe, I'm going to turn this over to you to run through the first department. You're muted.
And that was the best speech I've ever given. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and to you and the members of the board. Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee, thank you. This morning we have our Recreation Director, Eric Beebe, to kick off the hearings. And I would remind everybody that in addition to the standard budget documents, Eric has also presented additional information, which is available in your packets. And if anybody needs, I can do the screen share while Eric and his colleagues present their budgets this morning. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it right over to Eric for his presentation.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm Eric Beebe, the Recreation Director. So our budget, as most of you probably know, is broken up into 3 separate categories. We have year-round personnel budget, seasonal personnel, and expense budget. I'll just run through those quickly for you. Our year-round personnel budget is going from $272,618 to $274,076 for a 0.5% increase. That's due to any contractual obligations for my year-round staff. Our seasonal personnel budget, which includes lifeguards, gate attendants, swim instructors, beach supervisors, and swim waterfront director. Last year was at $218,026. This year is at $213,213, and that's a decrease of 2.2% for our seasonal. And lastly is our expense budget, which is level funded with last year at $45,575. So our overall rec budget request for this FY22 is $532,864, which is down roughly $3,500 for an overall 0.6% decrease for this upcoming fiscal year. The decrease in seasonal is factored into, we always factor in amount of beach days for personnel. We have a pretty complex formula that we put together to determine what we need for the summer. Also, it factored in this is we're looking to get back to programming almost as usual this summer. The one thing that will be restricted is swim lessons because there's a lot of contact with swim lessons. So we expect a decrease in personnel needed for swim lessons this year if we have any at all. So that explains the decrease in our seasonal personnel budget. We are not seeking any new personnel or additional hours for any staff, seasonal or year-round. We are not expecting any change. We're not looking for any changes in fees, no increases or decreases in fees, including beach sticker fees and program fees and daily pass fees for this year. So overall, we're functioning at a 0.6% decrease is what we're asking for. We're really looking forward to this upcoming year and trying, like I said, to get back to business as usual with programming. And it's a good sign. We've got some good spring programs coming up outdoors. So it's really great to hear the kids again around here. And you know, that's my short, quick budget presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on that.
Thank you, Eric. I have a couple questions regarding the summer program fees. You're keeping those the same as last year, but there's significantly reduced from the year prior to that. Are those the swimming lessons that you're talking about?
Are you talking as far as the budget request?
Right, the revenues.
Oh, the revenues, yes. The summer swim lesson is our only general fund revenue that comes through the summer. As far as daily beach passes, we're anticipating an increase in those. We feel that last summer we did not sell daily passes at Pleasant Road Beach because of, you know, parking restrictions and size of the beach. I think we'll be able to handle that better this year with the eased restrictions. So we'll be able to sell daily passes again over there this year, which will increase revenue. And, you know, beach stickers, we're looking around the same, maybe a slight increase for this year. People are itching to get back out to the beach. And then as far as, you know, swim lesson programs, like I said, is our only general fund revenue from the programs in the summer that we run. I have that down as a 0 for now. We'd like to try to have some kind of altered swim lessons this year. We're still looking into exactly what we can and can't do. But as far as our other programs, we do plan on having a camp this year. It may be a little smaller than usual, as well as tennis lessons and some summer ball. But those are all revolving fund programs at this time.
Thank you, Eric. Beach concessions, where do we stand on that? Are we locked into the same, could you just review quickly our contract on that for the beach concessions?
Sure. Yeah, there's currently, as of last year, we had 3 separate contracts. There was one for our ice cream vendor, which is for all town beaches. There was one for food concessions at Red River Beach, and there was one for food concessions at Bank Street Beach. The Red River Beach food concessions contract runs through 2023. And that's a group that we've had down there for a couple of years. It's done well. We are currently, I'm actually sending it over to administration this morning. New contracts and new RFPs for ice cream vendor and for Bank Street food concessions. So we will have new bidders on that, but there are some interested parties already. But last year, the combined revenue from all 3 was $19,398.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Other questions, comments? From the board, hearing none, John, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Larry. Any members of the board, I'll call you by name if you have questions. Angelo?
No.
Mary?
Yeah, I have one, Eric. I applaud your budget, but I note that the expense part is down 14% from the last actual, and I just was curious what that changes. Now, meanwhile, I'm applauding what you're doing, but curious how you can do that.
I believe that takes into account the last actual, I believe had a $12,000 line item in there for maintenance on the lights at White House Field. That was transferred over to the DPW. So that was taken out of our budget. And that will also be a moot point soon as we are moving forward quickly with the lighting project over there.
Thank you.
Dan?
Oh, yes, a quick question. Eric, will the parking lots be at reduced capacity again?
We don't anticipate any reduced capacity for the parking lots. The only one that had reduced capacity last year was Pleasant Road Beach.
Right.
But we feel with the eased restrictions and the personnel that we'll have in place that we'll be able to open that up this year.
Cool. Very good. Thank you.
Eric, can I follow on that and just ask, we did have capacity issues at Red River Beach, but that was because of plovers, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
All depends on the plovers and where they want to nest this year.
Yep.
Any other questions, Dan? No. Mark?
No further questions.
Mark, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Eric, I just have one. It's a very minor one, just more for information. On the parking lot violations, what percentage of the amount collected versus, if you want to call it amount issued, is that? Do you know?
Yeah, the last time I checked in on that, they were seeing about at least a 70% return on the actual tickets written. So for instance, last year, I believe we wrote $28,550 worth of tickets. So we're seeing at least 70% actual return on people paying those tickets.
70%. And then if people do not pay the ticket, does it work, you know, like a policeman issuing a ticket, that somehow it goes to the state and it affects their either license or registration on the car?
Yes, I believe now there is something in place through the treasurer's office that processes the tickets now, that people do get flagged if they don't pay. So I expect that percentage to go up in the future, as people, I believe, won't be able to re-register their car if they don't pay the ticket.
Thank you. And I'm just, you know, not looking to have an aggressive policy here, but I just want to know what the policy is. So
yep.
Thank you, Eric, and great job on the budget.
Thank you.
John, if I could just follow on that question,
Sure.
as Eric was indicating, Eric's last statement is supported by our bylaw requirements that if there are outstanding liens, fines, or levies, there are certain things that can be impacted. So that's one of the ways that we can go after anyone that's not paying non-criminal dispositions. And we also have our town clerk serving as the parking ticket hearing officer. So we do have the ability to have a local disposition of that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. I mean, would that affect, I don't want to get into a big, but like if someone wants a building permit, let's say, and does that affect their building permit application?
It could. Rather than speak off the cuff, I can refer back to the bylaw that covers all of the things that can be impacted. It's a very broad list. Generally, things that can't be impacted are vital records or vital actions such as birth, marriage, and death activity, and some other exceptions. But generally speaking, there's fairly wide latitude as to what that can impact upon.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And thank you again, Eric.
Thank
That's all,
you, John. Joe, I have one follow-up in general request. Could you provide notes, as you know, policies like a corporate financial statement, maybe, on transfers of expenses, such as Eric referred to, the maintenance of the lights, so we can look at those and have an idea what the true expenses are?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, are you asking about cost allocations?
Right.
So generally speaking, we'll endeavor to do that. I do know that given how Munis operates and our staffing levels, I don't know that we're going to be able to mirror what the private sector has and what people are used to.
That's why I'm suggesting a note. I don't want you to spend a lot of time on it, but at least directionally we know what the overall costs are.
Sure, I'll work with Carol to get something together on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Eric, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Joe, go ahead. You.
I did just say next up is our Council on Aging Director, Emily Mitchell. Again, there's materials in the packet, and turn it over to Emily for her presentation.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'll try to do just the broad strokes here, and then we'll be happy to go into more detail or answer any questions you have. So our proposed fiscal year 22 budget totals $475,338. It is level funded, consistent with the town administrator's budget directive. As with most departments, about 82 or 83% of that budget is salary and wages. That's down. Our total salary and wages amount is down just slightly, and that's due to some staff turnover over the course of the last year and a reduction in supplemental van driver hours. We had allocated additional funding for van driver hours for fiscal year 21 in recognition of the fact that our van capacity was reduced in light of COVID restrictions and knowing how important transportation services are for our local seniors. We don't anticipate needing to continue those supplemental hours for fiscal year 22, so I did take those out of that proposed budget. On the expenditure side, we did have a small increase. Our biggest cost drivers are our food costs. So we do run a daily meal distribution program. And since the onset of COVID, our meal program has tripled in size. So we're currently delivering about 70 meals per day and serving 90 unique individuals. And that is more than half of our expenditure side budget. Some of the other big drivers are postage costs in support of our bi-monthly newsletter that we deliver to about 2,000 homes in Harwich. And that's our best method for advertising programs and services to our residents. The other biggest cost driver is our subsidy for Harwich residents to attend the Orleans Day program for folks with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. I do want to note that the number included in the budget is about half of our fiscal year 20 allocation. And that's because that Orleans Day program was shut down in light of COVID pretty much right at the onset in March of 2020. So we were no longer subsidizing folks to attend. So we reduced that dollar figure by about half. That program is still shut down. We don't know when it will resume. I've been in contact with the Orleans Council on Aging director who runs that program, and they're actively involved in putting a modified program in place. So I do expect that that will be operational before the start of fiscal year 22. But I did maintain that cut, not knowing exactly what that program will look like or when it will resume. And then the other, we did make other cuts for fiscal year 21, again, in light of the change in operations. So we reduced a lot of our vendor payment costs for guest speakers and presenters, other programmatic costs, advertising costs, printing costs, because we weren't, incurring those expenses due to the lack of on-site programming. I did maintain those cuts, again, not knowing what our on-site operations will look like. We do anticipate a slower return to normal given the risk level of the folks we're here to serve. So those cuts have been maintained to keep in accordance with the level funding directive. So that's the broad overview, and I'm happy to take any questions or go into any more detail.
Thank you, Emily. Questions from the board?
Larry.
Michael?
Emily, are we meeting the needs of our seniors? We've talked about budget cuts for the past 3 years based on our situation, but COVID obviously escalated that. And I hear you with not as many people coming in, but are we actually meeting the needs of our seniors?
That's a hard question for me to answer, I will confess. Since the onset of COVID, we have reprioritized our entire operations in a way to meet kind of the most dire needs. So that really is nutrition, transportation, particularly getting people to their medical appointments. We've seen just a dramatic decline in available community resources, largely due to COVID. Although there was a shortage truly in meeting a lot of these essential needs, even pre-COVID, that will continue post-COVID. We've tried to be creative with our outreach and town nurse services to provide them remotely. So I'd say in prioritizing these high needs, we're not able to meet the other, socialization, health and wellness needs as well. And that would really require probably additional staff support and funding. And so we're prioritizing all of our efforts to do that, both staff time and resource wise. But it is really focused on those critical needs at the expense of some of the other needs that we see in the community.
Is it fair to say that your numbers of people that you're giving assistance to, given our aging population in town, go up every year?
Dramatically, yes. And that not just the numbers, but the type of need tends to be more significant. We're seeing people who need higher levels of care, active case management, and those are very time intensive and resource intensive tasks that have just continued to grow dramatically.
So it struck me when we had a conversation last week about, 2 weeks ago, about the Human Services Committee and the Human Services Grant, that the town of Harwich, through an article that was passed at town meeting, I believe twice, that prior to our fiscal problems and our increased aging population, that the town of Harwich is giving away, and this is not a slight on the committees that we're giving this, or the nonprofits we're giving this money to, but it strikes me that we're giving taxpayer money to out-of-town people and out-of-town nonprofits with some benefit to the town of Harwich, but not 100% benefit, or probably not even 50% benefit. And our Council on Aging is struggling to meet the needs of our seniors. And I've talked to Larry about this, and I would love to see, whether or not it's even legal, but I'd love to see the Council on Aging apply for part of the grant from our taxpayers' money, or a straight reallocation of that money, which would require a town meeting vote. But why do we continuously give away money to other organizations when we can't take care of our own? I guess that's my ending point. But great job, Emily, making this work with the limited resources and the level funding budget that we're asking for.
Thank you, Michael. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, especially off that last comment. I know from personal experience, just to remind everybody that also the chair of Site Law Services, if you look at that list of human services grants, there's a tie to the town. And the question then becomes, who's going to do it? If you don't give it to organizations that are set up to do specific things within this town, I think absent a list to show you what kind of services are provided, it's not entirely accurate to say, well, we're robbing from the Council on Aging. And as a matter of fact, most of those things are augmentatory to either the Council on Aging or other activities that go on in town. And most of these charitables aren't constrained by the same kind of cost structure that the town has, with the overhead considerations like wages and salaries plus benefits. Second thought is, before we get too deep into all of these discussions, especially, I mean, Angela made the comment the other day, if you're going to question whether we're meeting the needs in one area, you've got to remember that it's contextual with all of the other services that we give. It is not the town administrator who asked for a level funded budget. It is, in fact, the Board of Selectmen that asked him to get that from the department heads. So at some point or another, if you're thinking that we're not doing enough in this area, then we'd have to identify something, some other way of doing something, or some other place to get the money from. But it was our instruction to flatline the budget. So we can't pick a program and say, I don't understand why you're getting funded that much without the realization that we have a finite pool of finances and we're allocating them where we think that they should go. And if we feel on the board that there's a different priority, that's great. Tell the town administrator, but we're going to have to pull the money from somewhere. We're not in a place where we're going to raise taxes or do anything in that nature. And while I'm sympathetic that we're not meeting all the needs that we would like to meet with the Council on Aging, I'm pretty sure that almost any organization that comes in here says, I'm not in a position to do everything that we should be doing. It's all about putting together a puzzle that we can live with. And it was our instruction to the town administrator, so he's not on the hook for him asking for a flatline increased budget. It was the Board of Selectmen that instructed that in their budget message.
Larry?
Yeah, Michael, I see you're lit up
Just
here.
a quick comment. I went through last year's Human Services Grant. Again, I'm not picking on any particular organization, but it still strikes me after Don's long explanation on that yes, those are services, but those, as I'm reading it with the state and other funding organizations, they have a lot more access to grants and a lot more opportunities than what we've given our town administrator for level budgets. And you know, I was only responding to Emily's comment that the budget directive by Joe, but I think everybody in Harwich knows it's the Board of Selectmen that sets the original budget. But I think as we put together this committee, or the committee is this year, we need to look at our seniors and the people in the town of Harwich, and before we continue. And Don, I appreciate that other departments are also suffering, but I would say that our seniors seem to be the most at risk right now, and it's the, you know, the year-round people that live in this town that have been hit very, very hard through COVID and prior to COVID. That's very important for me that we do as much as we can for them. You know, some of these other, and I think Angela's brought this up for years, you know, we can go department by department if you want, but when we talk about rec, you know, we're charging fees, which are paying for a lot of those programs. So my point really is, I think we need to take a hard look at what organizations are getting our money, and is it 100% beneficial to the people of town of Harwich? And that's my ask.
Thank you, Michael and Don. I think we veered a little bit, but I think it's an appropriate time to reevaluate, especially since we're looking at the Human Services Grant money, so we can do that and have a good discussion. Any other one from the Board of Selectmen? I'm not sure. Ed had to step out, I think, for a minute. John, I'll turn it over to FinCom.
Thank you, Larry. Mary, any questions?
I'd just like to commend you, Emily, on a concise and thorough budget presentation that answered any questions I could have asked. So kudos to you for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Angelo?
No, I don't have a direct question, but I think that the comment that Don made about if we need to generate funds for that area, maybe we can look at other ways of dealing with other departments and make sure that they're covered and we're not spending extra tax money on those other departments. But that's something that has to be done by the selectmen.
Okay. Dan?
Yes, I may have a question. You recently sent out a message to seniors offering your assistance to those who are having difficulty getting the vaccine. And I'm just curious, what kind of a response did you get to that?
Thank you. We have received an overwhelmingly positive response to that. So we're working on a number of different tracks to assist with the vaccine process. We're working to identify our homebound residents and to get them served through Outer Cape Health and EMS, and the health department, of course, as well. We're working with the Pine Oaks complexes on their senior affordable housing. And then we're working with our residents overall who are eligible in partnership with Cape Cod Healthcare to get them appointments at the new Cape Cod Community College site. And so they're allowing us to send them names directly, and then Cape Cod Healthcare is contacting folks by phone to schedule those appointments, which bypasses the online registration process that so many people have struggled with for weeks and truly months at this point, especially the folks who are in the 75+ demographic. So they have asked us to prioritize people on the higher end of the age spectrum and people with technology barriers, and they're allowing us to send them names multiple times per week. So we've already sent, I think, 2 separate lists since that call went out, and are continuing to collect names and plan to send another today, and will, you know, as we go forward. So we're very thankful for that partnership and to have a new site open regionally in support of local residents who have had a hard time so far. So it's been a very positive response.
Is transportation an issue?
You know, it is, but it's been less of an issue than I would have expected. I think people have found caregivers or neighbors or family or friends who can get them to different places. CCRTA is also providing free transportation to vaccine sites within Barnstable County. So we've been able to connect them to those resources. And we've left schedule availability within our van transportation program to support people in getting to vaccine sites, but we actually have not had to use our van for that yet. So I think even for folks who would have transportation barriers for day-to-day appointments, they've found some support for these very particular circumstances.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark? Mark, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you, Mark. Just a couple quick ones too, Emily. A great job, of course, you know, in these trying times of COVID and everything else, community centers being somewhat shut down. Seniors don't have an access to that. As it has been mentioned, you know, normally it's good to be in a growth industry, and the seniors are aging in this town, so I guess that's a growth industry for you. So of course the budget's going to have to reflect that growth. Increases are going to have to reflect that budget increase. So great job. And question on the volunteering: has volunteering support slowed down, which of course would then impact you'll be able to deliver services to seniors? And how's that been?
I would say our volunteering has changed, but not slowed down. So with the implementation of our meal distribution program, we are relying heavily on volunteers, almost exclusively on volunteers to deliver those meals. And that's an entirely no contact process so that they're not putting themselves at risk. We did in the fall bring reception area volunteers back on site, fewer than we've had in the past, but still on site and answering phones and triaging folks who come in for appointments or services. And then we've implemented some totally remote volunteer opportunities like social phone call programs and remote friendly visiting. We're still providing tax services, which are volunteer-based, health insurance counseling, which is volunteer-based. So the format has changed, and perhaps the numbers are a little bit lower than in ordinary circumstances when we're at full-scale operations, but we're still heavily utilizing and relying upon the efforts of our volunteers, and very thankful for our volunteers and continuing to provide those services.
Well, that's great to hear. And you know, it's like we all do. We're adapting to the new ways of doing business. So thank you very much, Emily. That's it, Larry.
Thank you, John. I don't want to whine, Emily, but having a remote conference prevents us of having a great lunch that your group offers us. So I have to complain a little. Before we leave the subject, let me ask Joe and Carol if they wish to comment on this. And I forgot that last time. I'm going to put you at the end of each discussion, by the way.
Mr. Chairman, if I may start, I'll simply say that I remain in support of the budget that I have submitted, and certainly in support of the budgets that were presented today. And I would follow on earlier comments. I have often remarked to Emily that she remains a very thorough and effective communicator, and today is no different.
Carol, any comments, questions?
I have no comments at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. And Emily, nice, obviously nice presentation, but obviously from the discussion as well, everyone's very appreciative of all the work that's done by Council on Aging and the staff and volunteers. So I guess keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda, and Joe, I'll bypass you this time, is just to keep it moving, is Link and DPW.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Link Hooper, DPW Director. Thank you for the board and the Finance Committee for allowing me to talk about my favorite subject, the DPW budget. Usually, I prepare a variance analysis with supporting data in advance of this meeting. With the level fund budget directive we received, I really didn't feel there was a lot to look at, and can summarize it pretty quickly for you. We're able to reduce salary and wages by $79,000. We're able to do that for a couple of reasons. The 0% COLA. We have mostly seasoned staff that's not due step increases. And we had 5 retirements where people were brought in where the replacements were brought in mostly at lower levels. That $79,000 went to the expense side of the equation directly into C&D. May ask why C&D? Because building is going out of sight here. Honestly, the disposal area has done very well. There's more people here and there's a lot of construction. With that, I'd like to say the last couple of years, particularly with COVID going here, the dynamics changed. However, disposal area revenue has stayed steady and has been increasing. In Joe's budget documents, I think it was page 5 for mine, they go back to 2018 of 3.1 million, 19 of 3.3 million, 20 of 3.2 million. And this year, I just ran a calendar year report because DEP, all the reports we do are based on calendar year for the state with regard to all the solid waste reporting. And I just came up with revenue for the year of 3.35 million for the calendar year that just concluded last December 31st. Again, building has been out of sight and going gangbusters. Like I said, the mix of materials at the disposal area has changed. The commercial MSW is still down, which is an indication the restaurants have not fully recovered. But that has been more than made up on the construction and demolition side of that equation. The only other thing I really had was to talk about the articles. The DPW has 2 articles, one for road maintenance and $1,000. We have changed the road maintenance plan up significantly in these next couple of years in that 1.1 or 1.2 million of the projected 1.4 million will be going in the ground in the form of catch basin installations ahead of the sewer work. We took this strategy with the recent gas main project of 9.5 miles in Harwich. We put about $1 million ahead of that project in the ground so that when you get a final road, it is completely done, meaning you got a resurfaced road with modern infrastructure underneath it. We couldn't see having the wastewater project go through neighborhoods and leave old 20, 30, 40-year-old block belt basins that would be prone for failure and collapse with a brand new road there. So we refocused just about all of the money for the road maintenance other than normal required crack sealing and line painting towards that function. You may ask what happens if the sewer project changes direction from currently planned. In this instance, we would only be replacing basins that would need to be replaced anyhow. So it's not like we would ever be making a dreadful error of not putting that money towards where it's needed. Usually we try to level that stuff out a little more. In that, I put generally about 1/3 of our maintenance dollars into the ground. In this instance, we're putting more like 2/3 or 3/4. The only other article we have is for vehicles. It's a little heavy this year, and that is because last year we deferred 2 of them. So there's 4 vehicles on there, a 6-wheel dump truck for the highway, a front-end loader for disposal, a van for building maintenance, and a pickup for the highway department. And that concludes my formal remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Link, I just have one comment regarding the storm drains. Not only are you doing it for all the reasons you've explained, it's also mandated by the state as well that we replace these. And we, we've been working some years on an overall plan. So something we have to do, both because it's the correct thing to do and it's mandated as well, correct?
The MS4, yes, any basins we put in need to meet current standards. We're not up against the clock as far as being proactive as we are. The mandate right now is any outfalls that get into our estuaries and so forth, which is just about been addressed in its entirety. And Griffin Ryan is working on this with us collaboratively to make sure the town's in compliance.
Any idea of when we'll open up recycling so we don't have a single stream, and that helps generate some revenue as well, that we're still obviously not possible yet?
The plan right from the get-go was to return to source separation, which generates more revenue as soon as the pandemic was over. We've been fortunate that the CARES Act money has been paying that. So rather than receiving approximately somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 in revenue, we've been paying about $100,000, maybe $120,000 for the convenience of the single source. Recycled markets are very cyclical. They come and go. Right now, light iron is very high. Some of the papers are very low. I would say when the pandemic is over, it would be my recommendation that we return to source separation.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Other questions, comments for Lee?
Larry?
Michael?
I just want to shock Link and just say great job. I actually have no questions on your budget this year, and I think I'm normally the most harsh, but I would say as much as I could say, and I say it to your staff as often as I can at the dump, it's amazing to me to see how much we bring into that dump and take out of that dump and how well organized it is. But through the pandemic anyway, at least I was one of the ones that completely cleaned out his house and his yard. So I've spent probably 100 days at the dump. And very impressed with the operation, Link. And then even on the vehicles this year, which again, I'm normally the first to attack it, but I think you sold me at 200,000 miles and stepping through the floors. So I think we're good. Thank you, Link. And thank you, staff.
Checks in the mail, Selectman McCaskill.
Other comments, Don?
No, I think you and Michael covered what I was going to say anyway, but thank you.
Okay. Ed?
I've been as impressed with the transfer station and the whole public works operation as I think Michael has expressed. Your budget raises no questions this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. John, with that, I'll turn it to your to FinCom.
Great. Thank you, Larry. With that, Mary, any questions?
No, I would just add that I was never much for going there, but during the pandemic, it becomes an outing. So I go with my husband. It's incredibly impressive how neat and organized, and I might even go there myself someday. Who knows? So thank you.
Mary,
Good job.
Let me interrupt. I offered to make a run for my neighbor a while ago, and she says, absolutely not. It's her one chance to get out of the house.
Angelo?
No questions.
Dan?
Yes, Link, once we get through this pandemic stuff, are there any plans to reopen the treasure chest?
Really don't have an answer for you right now. The chairwoman just resigned from the committee. There hasn't been any real meetings or necessity for it. That'll be a board of selectmen decision whether they want to reinstitute that or not. We are currently utilizing the building for winter storage of DPW stuff. We could certainly use the space, but I think the treasure chest provides, a valuable service to the community as well as a social gathering, as you're all alluding to.
It will be interesting to see what happens once we get through this pandemic, what kind of a response you get from the community regarding the status of that the treasure chest. So thank you.
My plan would be to bring that to the Board of Selectmen, and I view that as their decision, is whether we're be opening that again or not. But right now there has been very little activity with the committee, and they've lost a few members.
Yeah, it's just the word that I'm getting is that a lot of people miss it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
John, this is Ed. If I could just mention that you mentioned you're using the space's winter storage. My wife keeps on putting things up in our loft saying, well, when the treasure chest reopens, we'll take. So we're using it for winter storage for the treasure chest.
Mark, any questions?
Larry took my question, so I have no others.
Okay, great. Really no questions, Link. Fantastic job, as everybody says up there. It's a well-oiled machine. And it's hard to pick out a singular function up there. But I just I would like to just highlight your maintenance staff or your vehicle staff. I mean, not only do you maintain all your vehicles, and I have been up there, I've seen what they can do, and they can change anything from a spark plug to a tractor trailer engine in that place. And so not only do you do your own vehicle maintenance, but you do all, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you also do all the maintenance for all the other town vehicles as best you can. I mean, I'm sure there's some specialties in the fire department and stuff like that, but for the most part, you do the town's total vehicle maintenance. And it's just a commendable job. I know other towns that outsource this at tremendous expense. So thank you, Link, and all you crew you do up there. And that's
Thank
it,
you.
Larry.
Surrounded by good people that make me look good on a daily basis, and rest assured that's not an easy job for them.
Thank you, Link. Joe, I'll come back to you, and you have some ending comments.
Multitasking and getting my microphone caught in my mask. Pandemic problems. None other than I've said before, Mr. Chairman. Maybe to just elaborate very briefly, I know that the department heads, as I've said constantly, have done an admirable job under difficult circumstances generally, but also with the pressures that I've imposed upon them to ensure that we meet the selectmen's directives. And I'm pleased for them that they have this opportunity, even if it's not in the way that we want, but for our department heads to be able to present as directly as they are right now, I think is helpful. And again, Eric, Emily, Link have done a great job, and I'll use that as our segue to put pressure on Carolyn that I know she'll exceed. I have no doubt Carolyn will do an exceptional job as well. And with that, I'm going to mute myself and extract myself from my mask and my headphones.
Okay. Before we move to you, Carolyn, let me ask Carol if she has a comment.
I have no comments at this time.
Thank you, Carol. Carolyn, I was going to say the floor, but that's not right. The screen is yours.
Why, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And Joe, thanks so much. No pressure at all now. Whew, I'm going to change my whole presentation. I think I will follow in the footsteps of my colleagues, and I really will just give you my budget narrative. So the proposed FY22 Community Center budget is consistent with the directive to level fund relative to the FY21 appropriation. Those proposed budget goes further and offers a net 1% reduction from FY21 to FY22, accounting for all cuts that could feasibly be absorbed within current operations and in recognition of the current financial climate facing the town and its residents. The largest budget increase from FY21 to FY22 is tied to contractual mandated salary and wage costs. While the 0% COLA increase was factored in for all department employees, contracted steps, increases in longevity payments netted an over 1.8% increase in this category. This increase required cuts to the expenditure portion of the community center budget to comply with the level funding directive. Of the expenditure budget line items, approximately 74% of the department's budget is accounted for solely in utility costs. the electric, gas, and water. Other non-negotiable costs needed to operate this building include the phone, groundskeeping, trash removal, building equipment repair, and inspections. That comprises of an additional 20% of the budget. The community center absorbs the full cost of these expenditures, though it is important to note that they are utilized by 5 other town departments: the Council on Aging, Channel 18, Recreation, Cemetery, and Veterans Affairs. My utility costs were calculated based on guidance from the Finance and Water Department. The proposed reductions are reflective of lower actual incurred cost relative to the budget amount in certain line items. For example, due to equipment upgrades in recent years, the total amount paid annually for maintenance and repairs work has been reduced. Further, the groundskeeping line is reduced in recognition of the in-kind services provided by both community center and senior tax work-off volunteers. This budget would allow the department to maintain the current level of service. Any further reductions would impact on community center operations, the operation of other town departments located within the building, and the hundreds of community groups and thousands of residents that utilize this space. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Carolyn. Well done. Ask for questions, comments. Don?
Oh, she runs a very tight ship and really appreciate the community center. Can't wait to be fully open.
Thanks. I did want to just mention one thing. The Harwich Community Center was the first community center all Cape-wide and one of the first in the state of Massachusetts to resume some level of operation. So I think the town should be really proud of what they do.
Yep. Yeah. Ed?
I just want to thank Carolyn and all the staff at the community center for all the help they've given the myriad of different community groups I've been involved in over the years. Unfortunately, not so much this year, but I'm sure certain in the coming year.
Yeah. Michael?
I would echo that. Great job, Carolyn. You've exceeded expectations on the keeping things going and staying visible through the pandemic and prior to the pandemic. Community center is such a terrific asset to the town of Harwich and obviously very, very well used. So thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
My last comment, Carolyn, is I'm always proud of the community center, not only for what it is, but how we work together with the Council on Aging and Recreation to make a huge town asset. And I'm not sure every town can say that. So we'll give ourselves a pat in the back and applaud all of your efforts on that.
Thanks. I agree wholeheartedly.
John?
Thank you, Larry. Mary, any questions?
No, just echo what's been said. It's impressive. And if I heard you right, Carolyn, 94% of your expense line is fixed. And you're dealing with, shall we say, discretional, but I'm sure there are a lot of other expenses of only 6% of your expense line. That's pretty impressive.
That is absolutely true. So thanks for noting it.
No questions.
Dan?
Just a comment, Carolyn. I recently got my J&J vaccine, and I'm in the 2-week holding period. And right after that, I'm going back to that exercise room. I can't wait to get there.
We are missing everyone, but we've been pretty busy in there, so can't wait to have you back in.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark?
No questions.
Just a quick comment, like everybody echoed here, Caroline, that you're doing a tremendous job up there, under difficult circumstances. It truly is a community center, and it is, a hub of activity for town residents, both young and old. And I like that concept. We hear of senior centers. Well, You know, this is not a senior center. It's a community center. And congratulations on juggling many balls, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
John, I
I'm
think
sorry.
you've missed Angelo.
No, he spoke.
I spoke.
Oh, he spoke. Okay.
Yeah.
Joe or Carol, any comments?
Now that I've extricated myself, none further than my earlier comments. Thank you.
I have no comments at this time.
Thank you, Carol. Sheila, we'll move next to you in the Youth Services.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time and having me present my budget, which hasn't really changed much as far as line items and that stuff in the past probably 5 or 6 years. And the expenses in my budget are $3,485. And it's if anybody has any questions about any of the particular line items, it's professional supervision, cell phone, courses, and continuing ed in order to keep my license maintained, office supplies, and the actual cost of licensing and memberships and that kind of thing that are associated with the position. And I did recently, in the past year, drop out of one of the organizations because I felt that they were no longer sort of giving me the bang for the buck as far as, you know, all the resources that they offer. So I'm now a member of the Massachusetts Mental Health Counselors Association and the American Counseling Association. That's it in a nutshell with the line items. I wanted to defer to Carol because there was an omission in the salary, the 1% salary increase. I'd have her speak to that if I could, and then answer any questions about my line items.
Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. So between the treasurer collector's office and our office, we missed a longevity increase that is due to Sheila in FY22. So that would necessitate an increase to the budget, which could be handled in a multitude of fashions, whether you would choose to increase the budget, you know, that you bring forward to your town meeting, whether you would prefer to handle it moving forward in FY22 as a budget amendment or transfer during the fiscal year. The total omission, I guess we'll say, is, I just need to pull it up, I'm sorry.
I think it's 949.55.
Correct. Yeah.
So I guess the end of that is something we need to deal with before we finalize the budget.
I would agree. Thank you.
Does anybody
Sheila,
have any questions about the line items, or?
I don't. I'm going to steal Michael's question on the seniors and direct it towards the youth services. Are you feeling increased pressure with the pandemic?
There's certainly been a huge uptick in my caseload, not only with kids who are my, you know, first priority in my job, but also with parents that I've been seeing as well to support them. A lot of them don't have, you know, resources and time to, you know, seek outside therapy, and the outside therapists, especially the agencies, are booked out as much as 2 or 3 months. So I'm doing a lot more, you know, a lot more teletherapy than ever before, probably before I was even doing face-to-face. And that's a good thing. I mean, that means that they're getting services, and I'm also getting a lot of calls from families in the Monomoy district that aren't from Chatham to try to find them resources, even if they have to wait a couple of months. But it's the shortage of mental health counseling on the Cape overall is scary right now. It's sort of, a lot of people are very anxious and feeling the year-long, weight of COVID, but are starting to feel a little bit more positive now. So, yeah. So I've been very busy.
I know some of this pressure is extended out of Cape Health Services. They're initiating a program as well for additional support. So,
yeah, and I'm looking forward to when everybody's vaccinated, being able to get back into the schools again and help the schools, because I collaborate with them a lot, and also do workshops and in-person girl power, in-person trainings and things like that. So, and maybe hugging a lot of people.
All right, I'll move on now. Michael?
Larry, sorry, just a thank you to Sheila. I know she does absolutely great work, and her presentation to us and the programs that she adds are invaluable to the youth in this town. And thank you, and thank your committee as well.
Thank you, Michael. Don? I think I've lost Don temporarily.
I thought you said John. Okay.
No, I'm here. Sheila is one of the unique, provides one of the unique, I think, services that our town does, more so than I think any other town on the Cape. And it's obviously been a year that everybody's been under a lot of stress, all of us as well as all of our kids. And I'm just grateful that we as a community have decided to fund this service, and that we have such a great service provider delivering it. Thank you, Sheila.
It's been an amazing 22 years, I'll tell you, to be able to be lucky enough to have this job. So,
John? FinCom's turn.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Mary, any questions?
No questions. Just as everyone else stated, very impressed with what you do with a pretty damn small budget.
Angelo?
Just a question. I assume that since we know there's going to be $1,000 roughly more expense, that the budget will be changed before it gets to town meeting? Is that the plan?
I think that's what somebody said.
Angela, I think Carol says we have a couple options we need to consider going forward. So we'll need to bring that back and consider that.
I just think it's a good idea. If we know what's going to be there, we should put it in.
Yeah, agreed.
Dan? Mike? You're muted, Dan.
No comments other than good job.
Thank you.
Mark, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Just thank you, Sheila, for all you do for the town and in these trying times. I mean, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you for your time.
As usual, I think Carol's already made a couple comments. Joe, any other comments, or should we move?
Just for a moment, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Sheila is, as you know, one of a handful of departments that are a single person department. But Sheila has also established a great protocol whereby if she's unable to work for any reason in the short term, she has folks that she can rely upon, and she has a good system going there. I just want to put out there that Carol and I are mindful of our single-person departments and try to remain vigilant in supporting them where they don't have a lot of other folks to rely upon. Having said that, again, Sheila gets it done with very little, and I know as a dad of children here that her work is exceptional.
Thank you, Joe. Any other comments from anyone on the call?
Yeah, Larry?
Yes, Don?
I want to take the effort because we had the Council on Aging here before. I'm not a big fan of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you judge a community and how they treat the people who are most at risk. And Sheila's the other side of that equation because there are too many child advocates out there. And as Joe points out, she's definitely a mentor that helps kids through bad times that could get much worse if we didn't have that. So all the more praise that it's done with just one person and support group.
Thank you for that, Don. I'm sure there's agreement by everyone. Moving next in, I see Chief LeBlanc want to discuss the fire department.
Good morning, everyone. Deputy Thorne is on the call with me as well. So again, we'll spare you the pain of a lot of detail of the budget. Just to clear up a little bit of confusion, I probably picked the wrong year to do this, but as many of you may be aware, the fire department has always run 4 different budget segments. We had a salary and wages and expense on the fire side, and a salary and wages and expense on the EMS side. It works, but it was just a lot of places to keep track of a lot of information. So this year we decided to combine them. But in doing so, it gave everyone the impression that there was a 5% increase in the fire department budget. The reality is the budget that I present to you today is about a $29,000 decrease from the FY21 budget. So we, understanding we are one of the bigger departments like the police department, like DPW, we have the biggest personnel costs. You're looking at a budget that's $30,000 less than last year's budget, which was $130,000 less than our original request. So like everybody, we've done our part. I present a budget to you that in compliance with the town administrator's directive meets your budget requirement, but also meets our ability to maintain our core services. So we can still man the ambulances, man the fire trucks, man the stations, and go out the door and do our jobs. The biggest hit where we're taking with this budget is the professional development, the required training for our firefighters and paramedics and EMTs to be able to maintain certification. So that's the pool that keeps shrinking. And we're at a point where an additional shrink will start to cost us our ability to provide services as we currently do. And that would be a much longer discussion, and we're not there yet. I feel comfortable with the budget that's in front of you, that we can continue to provide the level of service we have. COVID kind of was funny for us. Everybody anticipated, and I think partially because of the news, that we were going to have this massive increase in runs and calls, and we actually went the other way. We had almost 100 run decrease from March until April, and we think that was because people were afraid to go to the hospital. They were afraid of being infected, so they stopped calling us. And then we kind of picked up over the summer again, and we're in a little bit of a lull now. And I think that as we go toward the summer, we're going to see a pretty robust summer for our services based on the amount of people that are here. And as we start to return to normal and the masks come off, so to speak. The other portion of our budget is the capital side. And I know that the board, let me start with the non-debt exclusion issues too. So first of all, we put in for a replacement staff vehicle. This is to replace 2 of the staff cars that we use to supplement our emergency response. One of them's an old police cruiser. One of them is the old deputy chief's car. They're both over 130,000 miles. Capital outlay. Didn't see the ability to fund them going forward this year. I agree 100% with that. We'll make it work. DPW does an awesome job of keeping our vehicles running, so we're comfortable with that. The second non-debt exclusion is the police and fire radio upgrade, and I know there were some questions about this. under the previous administrator, I was put in charge of the radio systems for police and fire and ultimately the town. We upgraded the town radio system so that everybody was on a common platform, except for police and fire emergency operations. That radio project was done 2 years ago. And this piece is something that's been coming, and we originally had calculated about $1 million. The state radio system, which both the police and the fire department operate on, is being upgraded over the next 5 years. In order for us to be able to use our radios on the new system, they have to be upgraded. Radio life is about 7 to 15 years. It depends on how the technology goes. Originally, with this $1 million estimate, we were, the fire department endeavored to write a grant, which we have written, to try and replace our radios. But the state, unlike the state usually with their unfunded mandates, actually use the 911 assessment money, and there's $25 million available to fund local agencies that are using radios on the system. So what was supposed to cost us $1 million between police and fire is now about $225,000 all in. There shouldn't be any additional expense, and this should cover us for easily the rest of the upgrade and probably the next 10 years of radio use. So that's a big win for us with the state ponying up that money. And it'll be even better if we can get the grant, because it'll cut this number down even more. The final capital piece is the Quint. I understand the environment we're in. We 2 years ago decided to delay purchasing an engine and then move the ladder up based on what the ladder was costing us to repair, and was supposed to be done last spring in 21. Obviously, with last year, we understand why that happened. We put it back before the selectmen and the FinCom again for consideration. It's a vehicle that between the engine and the ladder, we spent about $30,000 in the last 2 years keeping them running. The ladder has failed its ladder test the last 2 years in a row. We've been able to get it repaired so that it will pass, but they're just both going to continue to cost us money, and the cost of this vehicle is going to continue to increase. So when we originally proposed it, it was about $1 million savings to the town. That's getting cheated away a little bit now because cost increases on the vehicle. But I would still submit it and hope that you would support it. If you don't, we certainly can continue to make what we have work. The DPW will continue to do what they do and keep the fleet going. So that kind of covers the capital side of it. The other thing that we've done consistently, and we will continue to do, is try and find other ways to enhance or defray costs through grants. We use a supplemental program for the ambulance billing that's generated between $130,000 and up to $160,000 a year. And this will be the third year the deputy did the paperwork this year for it. It's called the CPE program. It's through Mass Health. So that's added to the ambulance receipts every year, which is just it's an additional thing. It comes out of Mass Health funding. So there's no additional cost to anybody that's using the ambulance. It's out of insurance money that Mass Health has. And then we've been fortunate for 3 years in a row now, we've received grants from the federal government of upwards to almost $600,000, which have taken big equipment purchases off of the capital plan and funded them through federal grant funding. So that's pretty much where we're at in a nutshell. I basically would turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, and answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Chief. I'll call on the board. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to say that without any aspersions on any other program, that the fire department has been consistently transparent, cooperative, and creative in the way that they're approaching budget. They've increasingly gone after grants to be able, to fund specific things that are needed and upgrades. And I really appreciate the cooperation from them. It's an extremely professionally run organization.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Ed?
I think Don has spoken well for me also.
Okay. Michael? Well, While Michael's connecting, you made two comments, Dave, that I want to get back to. One is that it is concerning if you're worried about training and professional development, because that's always is a key for everyone, especially fire. I assume you'll bring that back in the next budget then to so that you don't get behind.
Yeah, so we leveraged a couple different things. So some of the pluses of COVID that come out of it is we were able to shift to these Zoom training programs like we're doing this meeting now, and we've been able to get some really top quality instructors in and available to our people at a fraction of what it would normally cost to send them. So that part's been a plus. But the Mass Fire Academy classes, the certification classes for fire officer, fire instructor, all those have pretty much dwindled away for the time being, and that's where we're failing. And then with cutting that money, those are expensive to send somebody to. So that's where we're going to start to struggle as things return to normal. That budget's a lot smaller. I think this year will be a good test to see how we make out with it. But yeah, the intent will be to build that back up. It was built up by my predecessor, and we will continue to try and restore it as much as we can, with an eye toward maintaining services.
Dave, just looking forward to next year then, what's your estimate? What type of money are we talking about to fund those?
I would have to look at what we ended up reducing overall, but it's probably right now, I mean, because we would increase it gradually, it's probably a $30,000 to $40,000 increase.
Okay.
But that's kind of off the top of my head at this point.
Okay. My last comment is that we put a plan a couple of years ago about the dropping a fire truck and going to the Clint. So I'm hoping that we'll approve that and get that through town meeting, because that's been a long plan to fill gaps. So I appreciate that. John, I'll go back to you.
Thank you, Larry. Mary, any questions?
No, just I've always been a huge fan of your services, and also always very impressed with you and the department's creativity and finding other ways to fund things. Kudos to you and your team.
Thank you.
Angelo?
Dave, on the Quint, if we ordered it this year after this meeting, when would the town get it?
It's about a 12-month build right now. So if it's approved in May, we're realistically looking at the following summer.
Okay, thank you. I realize that you probably need to buy it now to really not let it get any worse than they are. Thank you.
Me?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, sorry. No, I don't have any comments other than keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark?
I'd like to thank you again for putting my neighbor's house fire out, but no questions.
There was no extra charge for the police car that caught fire at the same time.
Which was unrelated to the fire.
Correct.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation here, and it's a great presentation. Just a couple quick questions. Yeah, Angelo stole my thunder on the Quint on the delivery time of about a year, and while we say it, that's a long time, a year, and you've already delayed this project 2 years. So all for the Quint. On the radio line item on the capital budget, I understand that, and I just want to commend the donation of a town resident. We saw it last night in our finance committee member, where a town resident stepped up, and tremendous amount of money for help in the land purchase of a piece of land in town. It's great to see town citizens not only donate, but donate extraordinary amounts of money to this town. So on the staff car, that's being covered in the operational budget?
No, it's being delayed at this point. So it wasn't part of it's over 50, so it wasn't part of the capital plan. So at this point, we're just continue to operate with the fleet that we have.
Okay, great. Because I didn't see it in the capital budget, and I saw it on your presentation. I was just clarifying that. And then the last one on the revenues, as good finance people, we always like revenues. What was the total revenue billing for the ambulance services?
I can't give you the total billing number. I can tell you that we were just, for 2020, we were just about 1.4 million in receipts for the ambulance, and then with the 168,000 in the CPE funding on top of it.
Okay. Actually, I meant to say what your actual receipts were. That's fine. And any kind of a guesstimate of what percentage of actual receipts versus billing?
So receipts versus billing is tricky because of the way the insurance. I would say that that number we don't want to look at. It's like $5 million versus $1 million. It's huge versus what you can bill out, but then what insurance will actually cover. I will say that the coastal billing is very good, and we have about a 90 to 93% collection rate on what we're allowed to bill for. So you have that whole insurance thing, and that factors into that CPE money of what we bill out for versus what we actually get, and then they determine the cost of the call, and then they allow us to bill for the difference. So that's what that CPE, that Mass Health program, does for us, and that's where we get that additional revenue.
If the public's listening on this call or tunes in later, I don't want people to think that we will not go respond to a call if they have no insurance. Please, that's not what I'm asking at all. And I just want to make sure that gets out there. And I'm sure we know that you would not do that. You respond no matter what. So
that is correct. And it's not a factor in anything that we do. It's an after the fact for the department. We submit the billing, the ambulance company, the billing company handles the process and everything else. And there's abatement processes in place with the treasurer's office, but that should never be a determination as to why somebody shouldn't call the ambulance or should, because the billing has nothing to do with how we operate.
Well, thank you, Chief, and I hope your Quint passes in the override.
Thank you.
That's it, Larry, for us.
Okay, thank you. Let me, as usual, ask Joe and Carol, but before I get to Joe, let me ask you, we've had our assistant town administrator on. I haven't called on her, so I just want to ask if Megan, do you have any comments on the proceedings today? Not to put her on the spot, which I may have.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I absolved her from participating. She was having it on in the background in case anything came up from a human resources standpoint.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to ignore her. So Joe, I'll turn it over to you for final comments, and we will then adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, if I could just to close out the discussion on the fire department budget, as Chief and Deputy Chief have done an extraordinary job, not just with their budget materials, but over the last year as partners in response to pandemic. I did want to bear out the discussion you just had about the debt exclusion, and just through you, Mr. Chairman, to the general public, remind everybody that we do have 2 debt exclusions that are proposed within the warrant that would be proposed to be on the town ballot on May 18th. And I do remain steadfast in my belief that these 2 debt exclusions, one for the Quint fire apparatus material and the other for $700,000 for our annual roads maintenance program, still comports with the board's directive to reduce the reliance upon overrides and debt exclusions. And so when we began the process of evaluating capital projects, we saw closer to 5 debt exclusions. And so I just want the general public to hopefully take comfort that that we in administration and finance have looked at that, and these are considered to be critical expenditures. And as has been said before, administration hopes that they are approved through this budget process, that they are approved at town meeting, and that they are adopted by the voters as well. And then, Mr. Chairman, I'll save some time, if I may, to just do a recap overall once you call upon our finance director for her thoughts.
Carol?
I have no comments about the fire department's budget.
Okay. Before, just quickly, I wanted to thank Craig for joining us as well. I know Dave mentioned your help, but very important to have support, I know, and all hands on deck to work at the budget. So thanks for your attendance as well with the chief. Joe, I'll let you give a final comments then, and we'll call it a day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to you and the members of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the Finance Committee. So this concludes your second of 4 efforts to get into budget discussions. I just remind everybody that tomorrow, Saturday, March 13th, we will begin again at 9 a.m. On the docket for tomorrow, in order, are golf, harbor, natural resources, Channel 18, water and wastewater, and police department. And then Monday evening during the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting, which will be a joint meeting with the Finance Committee, we will conclude this effort on the department budgets with the Finance Department, the Finance Division, excuse me, which encompasses assessing, accounting, and tax collection, information technology, library, and engineering. And then last but not least, Mr. Chairman, I think I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity, in case we do have anybody watching this live on Friday, March 12th. There is a stakeholders site review being led by Selectman McManus at 1 p.m. today. And so we're asking folks to assemble on the town hall side of the Albro House, or the Albro House side of town hall, I should say. Selectman McManus will be there. I will be there. The town engineer will be there. We will review preliminary designs, and then we will do a walk through Harwich Center. And so again, anybody watching this live on Friday, March 12th is encouraged to join Selectman McManus at 1 p.m. today for that site meeting.
Thank you for that, Joe. John, I'll turn it back to you for an opportunity to adjourn your meeting.
Thank you, Larry. And I'd just like to make a recap too, and thank everybody, town department on this meeting, the selectmen on this meeting. I think it's very important, for at least for the members of my board, our board, to understand how the budget is built. And this is a great stepping stone to that accomplishment. So thank you all, and hopefully the public can tune in and learn some details on how the budget is put together. And remind everybody to, like Joe said, about the budget tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and then the selectmen's meeting on Monday night. And then we got a very busy week next week too, with starting to approve these budgets and warrant articles. So thank you, everybody. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Is that what you want, Larry, or you'll adjourn the meeting entirely?
No, do your committee first, and I'll do the board of selectmen.
Okay. If someone makes a motion, Mark has made a motion. A second.
I'll second.
And a seconded. Mary, how do you say? What do you say?
Aye.
Angelo?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aye. And I'm an aye too, 5-0. Thank you, Larry, and thank everybody on this call.
Thank you. And I too, and I'm sure all of us on the board appreciate very much everyone showing up for today's meeting. And we'll meet again tomorrow morning. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The second.
Second.
I'll take a roll call. Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael? I think we've lost Michael at the moment, but I'm an aye. So we're officially adjourned. And thanks again.